Hello, and welcome back to Retrieving Sanity with your podcast host, Keegan, and this is your podcast for all mental health, addiction, recovery issues, and topics. And today we have a very special guest, and her name is Amy Vincze. Did I say that right? Vincze. I knew I should have asked. A little extra
flair there, yeah.
I knew I should have asked. The one time I don't ask it, I mess it up. But Amy is a dedicated professional in the health and wellness industry. She's got a lot of career industry experience underneath her belt, such as being a certified massage therapist, nutritional therapist, colon hydrotherapist, Reiki master, and what she's going to talk about with us today is tapping. So, Amy, tell us all about tapping. What is it? And how does it work for us? And more importantly, how did you come about tapping?
So, let's see. I'm just going to start with how I was introduced to tapping.
Okay.
I was crewing at a Tony Robbins event.
Ooh.
And I love Tony Robbins. He's such a heart-centered person and does a lot of great things for people. So I had been through his whole program. I was crewing at an event, and one of the other crew members contacted me like a month after the event and said, I found this amazing tool. I want to try it with you. So we had, I think, a total of one session, and I was hooked.
Huh.
I knew there was something special about this tool. And as you can tell from my bio, I've always been a seeker, trying to find something to make myself feel better, make the people around me feel better. And as soon as I found tapping, I knew there was something special about it. I didn't really understand why, but I just felt it. So I soon thereafter sought out my own coach and then was certified as a tapping coach. It's almost 17 years ago now.
Wow.
So tapping's been around for a long time, but it's just starting to become mainstream, which I'm really excited about because it's such not only a powerful, but a very easily accessible tool for anybody that wants to use it at any time. So what tapping is, it's kind of an extension of acupuncture, but it has a triple threat to it. So acupuncture is energetic medicine, basically. You focus on, using needles to remove energy blockages from our meridian system. But instead of using needles, tapping uses the percussion of tapping on your acupressure points instead of putting the needles in there.
Okay.
But it also adds in a cognitive therapy aspect because you are talking about what you want to release while you are tapping on your energy meridians.
Okay.
And then there is a somatic therapy element because as you're tapping on your body, you cannot help but gather your energy back from worrying about the past and gathering it back from worrying about the future because you're tapping on your body and you're bringing your energy into the present moment.
Okay.
So what's happening on a scientific level when all of that is going on, I'll just say that I'll want to talk a little bit about the amygdala in our brain. That's the stress center in our brain.
Okay.
So when we feel anxious or scared or even depressed, anything along those lines, it typically means that that stress center in our brain has been triggered. 99% of the time, we don't know what has triggered it, but it releases this flood of cortisol into our body because we have gone into fight or flight mode. Fight, freeze, or fawn. No. So what tapping does is it starts to de-escalate the response from our amygdala. And it lowers cortisol in our system 43% faster than if you had done nothing else. It will also lower your heart rate. It will lower blood pressure, and it will make you overall feel a sense of peace and calm. Now, when you couple that with the cognitive aspect of talking about what it is you want to release, and all of a sudden your body is feeling safe and calm, then you are neutralizing whatever it is that it feels scary or is making you feel anxious or has triggered you in some way. And it is reprogramming your brain to feel safer and calm about that particular topic. And it will neutralize things far faster than just talk therapy alone or just acupuncture alone. When I say far faster, what I mean is, something that you might spend a couple of years in talk therapy It might take a couple of weeks or months, depending on how often you do the tapping.
Wow.
So it really is a very fast, very effective tool. There's been over 300 studies, peer-reviewed studies done on tapping so far, and they all show the efficacy of it. It has benefits no matter what you use it on, and you will feel calmer, safer, and you will increase your happiness.
Wow. That is,
I know, right? It just sounds like the perfect tool.
Yeah. And it's free because
it's free because you can tap on your body wherever you are at any time. I like to tap on my treadmill when I'm walking on the treadmill. You can tap when you're lying in bed. You can tap on with one hand while you're driving your car. The possibilities for you are endless. It doesn't require a coach. Sometimes a coach or the Soar with Tapping app is like helpful to get you started on something that you don't necessarily know how to talk about. So you might need some help getting comfortable with using it on your own. But for the most part, even if you were just tapping and not saying anything, but thinking about what it is that is upsetting you, then you're going to achieve some measure of results. And the good news is it won't hurt. Like, it doesn't do any damage to engage this way. You're not going to hurt yourself. You're not going to make it worse. And you just might help it.
Wow. So we just got to make sure that we're tapping along the meridian lines, correct?
Yes. So that's one of the areas that I tell people this is the only thing that I will ever tell you to be a perfectionist about, because you have to be tapping on the exact right spot in order for it to be truly effective. So we could go through those tapping points with your listeners if you like, and I can explain it. But for example, like the first point is like right at the beginning of your eyebrows. But if you're tapping somewhere up in the middle of your forehead, then you're not achieving the same results than if you were tapping in the right spot. So you have to be, right at the beginning of your eyebrows on either side. So that you're right in the center there. But yes, that's perfect.
Huh.
And then the second one is right at your temple on the side of your eye.
Huh?
And then under your eye, right on top of your cheekbones.
Okay.
And then under your nose.
Okay.
Under your mouth.
Okay.
And then your collarbone point, if you find the beginning of your collarbone, you're going to go down about an inch. There's a little valley between your collarbone and your ribs on either side of your sternum. So you tap in that little valley right there.
Huh. Okay.
And then underneath your arms, like 4 inches down from your armpit. For women, it's where their bra strap would be typically.
Okay.
And then on your ribs, maybe 2 inches down from your nipple.
Huh.
And then tap your wrists together. And then the last spot is up on top of your head.
Up on top of your head. Okay.
Yeah. So what we typically do is and there's another spot that's just down from your pinky. It's called the karate chop point, where you would typically, give something a good old karate chop. You can tap those 2 points of your hands together and you would say something like, you could say an even though statement. So even though I feel so sad right now, I still love and accept myself completely. And you say that 3 times. And then you go through and do what's called repeater phrases on all the other spots. So you'd start on your eyebrow point and say, I'm so sad. And then move to the side of your eye and say, for whatever reason, if you don't know.
Okay.
And then under your eye and say, or for a million reasons. And you just cover all your bases. I feel this heaviness in my heart. You can talk about the physical symptoms of it. And I just feel so much despair when you move to the next spot. You just keep over and over again honoring and acknowledging whatever the issue is. Now, I want to point out that what we are doing often in the beginning is focusing a lot on what people call the negative feelings. I personally don't think any feelings are negative. I think there's some that are more challenging than others. But I think when we suppress or deny the uncomfortable emotions, they don't leave our bodies. They actually just stay and build over time and can cause physical and other emotional issues. And so it benefits us to lean into those feelings, actually help ourselves feel it, but doing it in a safe environment, because we are telling our body it's okay to feel safe and calm about this, right? While we're tapping on our bodies.
Yeah.
But we focus on the negative until, well, let's see. I think I left a big piece out of the process. So before we start tapping, we will take a rating between 0 and 10.
Gotcha.
Say, my sadness is really high right now, and it's about a 9 on a scale from 0 to 10, if 10 is extreme. And then you do the tapping, and then afterwards you take another rating and you say that went down to maybe a 7. And then you keep tapping and goes down to a 5. And then when you get to about a 3 or 4, this kind of a magic number, then you can start infusing a lot of positive comments. Like, it's okay to feel this sadness. I know that the sun is going to come out again and I will feel even better. I'm already feeling better because I'm honoring these emotions, and then I can let them go and knowing that they're neutralized forever, sort of thing. So you can start infusing a lot of positive comments. But until then, you really want to honor and acknowledge those challenging emotions and feel them as much as you can, so that they have their day in court. And then our body can release it from our system. So it doesn't remove the memory or the understanding of what happened in any way, shape, or form, but it will make your emotions neutral about what happened. And you just can look at the same thing and go, oh, it doesn't bother me anymore.
Yeah. And that's a big one.
That is a big one. And you can literally use it on anything. I have seen people release a phobia of flying on an airplane in a 90-minute session.
Wow.
Because they didn't have any trauma attached to it. They were able to release that very quickly. Complex traumas take a little bit longer period of time. You can use it on that. If you have a physical issue, you can use it on that. I have cleared just tremendous lower back pain for myself in a matter of probably 2 hours of tapping. Like 20 years of lower back pain, I've cleared in about 2 hours.
Wow.
I had chronic UTIs since the time I was 2 years old. Oof. And about 6 years ago, I started tapping on it like crazy, and I have cleared it probably like 95%. And when it does come up now, I know exactly what to tap on, and I'm able to clear it immediately.
That's cool.
You can use it on all kinds of things. Kids, I don't know, sleep, goal support. If you're feeling like you're procrastinating on something, if you're depressed, if you're anxious, you can literally use it on anything.
Wow. Anything.
Like I said, it doesn't hurt. It sure is beneficial to give it a shot.
Yeah, for sure. What about allergies? Do you know if they work on allergies?
I would certainly try. So here's what I would say about allergies. I don't know how woo this is for your listeners, but I tend to be a big believer that things like allergies and anything else, any physical ailment in our body, it does have an emotional connection to it. My first job with working with somebody with allergies would try to get to the root cause of whatever allergy they're experiencing.
Interesting.
So if it's something they're in their environment, or if it's a food, I might take a different approach with that and find out, like, when did this start? Was there something going on in your life at the time? In general, I would say that allergies have to do with just being an extremely sensitive person and feeling like a lot of things affect you on a few different levels. And so some are just harder to deal with than others.
Yeah.
So there's a lot that goes into that question, but I would certainly explore all of those things with tapping and see if any of them makes a dent in that.
That would be really cool.
Do you experience allergies?
I have a ton of allergies. Name something. And I'm probably allergic to it. Yeah.
Dairy?
Yeah, let's see. All nuts, all melons, shellfish, and the list goes on.
Okay.
My mother has celiac, so I'm gluten intolerant. And so it's just a whole bunch of other little things that I'm always looking for a little trick to help out with allergies. And I never really thought about an emotional tie to allergies, but it would make a lot of sense. And it was kind of funny because growing up, I was considered a picky eater. And then in high school, I started getting really bad chest pains, and I ended up having eosinophilic esophagitis. And so after about 3 months of testing, we found out that the white blood cells, the eosinophils, thought that my esophagus had a parasitic worm or some allergy attack. So we went and got some food allergy tests done, and turns out everything that I'm allergic to, I didn't like to eat. And I tried to tell my parents, just like,
I love that. Like, I love that. You're just wise about your body. That's great.
Yeah, but as a kid, you don't know how to tell them, like, hey, this makes me feel not good. And they can't believe you because you don't know how to communicate it. And so they immediately said, we're so sorry. We just thought you were a picky eater, but you just knew what was bad for you. And so it makes me wonder, like, did I have some emotional ties to some of the foods at a really young age? Which would make sense because I've been doing some deep dives into my childhood wounds. Mm-hmm. And it would make sense that some of those, like, the first thing that I can think of is a peanut butter and jelly sandwich that I didn't like to eat because of the texture. And I got in trouble for it.
Man.
And I'm allergic to nuts and jelly. So it's kind of like, I wonder if there's a connection there. I don't know.
I would certainly be willing to explore that. And I'm also somebody that believes that there can be kind of traumas passed down. Mm-hmm. So if your mom suffered from digestive issues, I think that those can be passed down because, her egg was in her body for a very long period of time, kind of absorbing everything in her environment. Yep. And so it makes sense that kind of it had the gene expression on that egg could have included some of the generational trauma. So there could be kind of a part of you that inherited your mom's feelings of different kinds of threats. Mm-hmm. And then you manifested it on a physical level.
Yeah, that would make a lot of sense. And it was also funny that you said sensitive people being sensitive to allergies because I'm a sensitive person. So I like to cry even though it's not manly,
So, good for you. That's all I have to say about that.
But it's one of those things that, like, if I knew an answer to how... if there was a magic thing to take away my allergies, I'd love to, because, like, I would love to eat a salad. Like, I don't know how many people would actually like to eat a salad, but I would crave a salad here and there, but I can't eat it because I'm allergic to lettuce. So it's kind of like, but with tapping, though, it offers a lot of people a free and ultimately an expressive way as well to get rid of their traumas, their history of emotional baggage, and the like. So whenever someone is skeptical about tapping, how do you get them into it? Do you have, like, actually, is there an app or something that can get someone into it?
Yes, I built my own app.
Sweet.
It's called Soar with Tapping. And the reason I did that, first of all, I'm so passionate about this tool. I just really want everybody to have access to it. Mm-hmm. And when I started building the app, what was available out on the market really only scratched the surface of the capability of this tool, because it was offering what I believed was a Band-Aid over certain issues, which sometimes is very necessary. You need a Band-Aid sometimes to get through your day instead of having blood gushing everywhere, right? Yeah. And sometimes you don't have the time to devote to getting to the root cause of something. You just need that Band-Aid. So that's helpful. But the way that I designed the app was to try and find that root cause, try and find the thing that is at the very beginning of all of our fears and all of our limiting beliefs. Because if you just focus on what is making you anxious in the moment as opposed to why it is making you anxious and then neutralizing that thing, you're going to continue to have this anxiety show up over and over again.
Oh, yeah.
Or you can get rid of the root cause, neutralize it at the beginning, and then free yourself from experiencing that particular brand of anxiety. So I really wanted to give people that opportunity. I mean, there's still over 170 different tapping scripts on the app to help you through moments, to help you fall asleep at night, to help you with physical issues. It's also just designed to give you an awareness of your own emotional landscape and kind of teach you about your emotions and what's really driving your behavior and whatever it is you want to change. Okay. So there's a lot of videos on the app about how to work through things like anxiety or depression, because if you're depressed, going to the site and seeing all those different tapping scripts, you don't know where to start. But there is an order to doing things that will get you through to your result a lot faster. Okay. So yeah, that's why I created the app, and to make it easier for people. I want them to just know that they have that resource at their fingertips at any moment. They don't have to wait for a really expensive appointment with a therapist, and they don't have to try and solve all their problems on their own. They have something that can help them through a difficult moment.
That is way too cool. And I love the fact that it's getting to the root cause, and I love that it's an app in general, because with everything being on our phones and iPads and stuff now, it's the perfect way to get someone that could be skeptical or someone that has no idea what it is into it, and not just doing the Band-Aid, but sitting there saying, here is a blank canvas, paint your picture and figure out yourself kind of thing. So that just gives a lot of freedom, and that freedom, I think, is what will help someone be able to pursue their healing without judgment. And I think that is the part that stops a lot of people,
Yeah. And they can do it totally and completely by themselves. If they feel too vulnerable to share really deep feelings with somebody else in the room or even with a therapist, they can do it totally and completely on their own until they feel safe enough to, go a different route. But getting it started is easier when you know that it can be done total and complete privacy.
Yeah. And whenever someone is doing this for their first time, though, what is one of the things that you would tell them to be mindful for, things to not psych themselves out?
First of all, I would say just have courage and lean into those uncomfortable moments as much as you can. Studies have shown that if you can feel an uncomfortable emotion for 90 seconds, it neutralizes in that short of a period of time. So while it feels so scary for some people to really engage with their anger, going there for 90 seconds will do you wonders for releasing it. Same thing with hurt or sadness or betrayal or massive amounts of fear. If you just engage with it and feel it instead of judging or criticizing or trying to fake happiness on top of it, then it's going to release a lot faster and it won't come up again after you do that. But
that's awesome.
One of the best tips I can give anybody for getting started with tapping or even just their own understanding of themselves is to write down a list of your top 10 fears. And I don't necessarily mean something simple like a fear of spiders or snakes or something like that, although those are in the app too.
Okay.
What I'm talking about are deep, what I call foundational fears, things that are really at the heart of almost everything that we are afraid of. So that would be things like fear of not belonging, fear of rejection or abandonment, fear of not being enough,
Mm-hmm.
fear of our bodies. For somebody like you that has severe allergies, or even
Mm-hmm.
somebody like me that has been through cancer diagnosis,
Mm-hmm.
there can be an extreme fear that our body's going to kind of pull the rug out from underneath us at any moment. And when we're
Yeah.
living in this vessel, that can be kind of a walking recipe for anxiety all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's also fear of just something being wrong with us,
Mm-hmm.
or a fear of financial insecurity. If there was any kind of financial trauma growing up, that can be a massive one for people.
Mm-hmm.
Not knowing where your next meal, or if you're going to have a roof over your head, that can be a really big one.
Mm-hmm.
So I tell people that's where you want to focus all of your energy in the beginning. And you might
Okay.
not feel like that's as important maybe as
Mm-hmm.
doing something like falling asleep, but
Mm-hmm.
any spare time that you get to address those foundational fears
Mm-hmm.
going to reap way more benefits than anything else in the
Hmm.
app. So
Wow.
you start there,
Huh.
neutralize those, and then everything else that was stacked up on top of it
Mm.
reduces by a lot without having to do that work on it. So if you don't have a fear of rejection or abandonment anymore,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to make your heart automatically open up to a new relationship, because you're not going to be as worried that somebody's going to hurt you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Starting with those fears, you're going to realize a lot better results. And then
Okay.
it kind of goes from there.
Gotcha. So you're saying to start with the 10 fears that hold someone back the most and tackle those, even if they're really, really scary.
Yes, that is exactly the thing that's at the root of big issues
Mm-hmm.
like anxiety or depression.
Mm-hmm.
Anxiety is sometimes often an unidentifiable but massive feeling of an environment being dangerous in some way,
Mm-hmm.
shape, or form, that there is some threat present,
Mm-hmm.
that it's unsafe and we don't know why. And you start
Mm-hmm.
to feel all these physical symptoms in our bodies, but really it's something that we are afraid of. And
Mm-hmm.
our environment has triggered that fear in us somehow. So if we go back to those foundational fears and we
Mm-hmm.
neutralize all of those fears,
Mm-hmm.
then anxiety shrinks to almost nothing.
Huh.
So, and same with depression.
Mm.
Depression
Yeah.
has at its core a fear of all of these foundational things.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but it adds on top of it disempowering beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
And then we start to make a vow that I'm going to maybe not allow my anger anymore. And we throw that out the window. We make a vow that I'm not going to make anyone mad at me anymore. We make a vow that
Mm-hmm.
we're not going to be vulnerable, or I'm not going to open my heart. And then
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden we become kind of a shell of a person.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what kind of brings on feelings of depression, because everything about us we've made wrong.
Oh, man. You're saying we made wrong. Ouch.
As a result, usually, of childhood trauma.
Yeah.
But it's our response to it that has developed depression.
Yeah. And that's also to not say that getting to the root is going to eliminate that cause forever, correct? As in, you could still have some other traumatic event come along and place
Absolutely.
another seed,
Yeah.
right?
Yes, absolutely. All trauma needs to be neutralized. I should say there are those foundational fears, but before that is the trauma that created the foundational fear. So trauma needs to be neutralized first. I should have said that earlier. That is not included on the app for a very specific reason, because all trauma is so unique to the individual person. I couldn't genericize a trauma tapping script that I felt good about doing. I will always recommend that somebody seek out a really trained professional to help them through the trauma itself, because especially with like a big T trauma, like an assault or a physical or sexual assault or something like that, there will be multiple points along the timeline of that event where we judge and criticize ourselves and feel guilty and ashamed. And each one of those points needs to be neutralized with tapping. So it's a very slow and very sensitive topic for people. And it needs gentle attention to it. For some people, for example, that have had sexual assault in their history, I oftentimes will have to start with that trauma, like on the other side of a city in a vault. And only the client has the combination to that vault door. And just knowing that it's there will make their intensity skyrocket to a 10. So we tap it down, knowing that it's there and that we might possibly engage with it at some point. And then we tap that down to a 0, and then we might bring it closer, but it's still in a vault.
Yeah.
And we just baby steps. Baby steps are really important with things like this.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's not one of those things you want to do an icy cold cannonball into.
Gosh, no.
That would do the exact opposite effect, I would imagine.
Yeah.
And
no more re-traumatizing. We don't need to go down that path. Yeah.
Yeah, no. And I think it's actually really great that you said to start with the fears, even though you also said that the trauma needs to be tapped first. But the thing is, in my mind, the way that it plays out is by acknowledging what the fear is, then I can see what trauma it actually was. So, because kind of like what you were saying, I could have a fear that has multiple trauma points, and I may not know which one actually caused the initial fear, you know? And so it's one of those that I would like to explore some of the weirder fears that I have, and then I would like to explore some of the ones that are like, oh, I'm afraid of heights. And it's like, oh, well, it's not so much I'm afraid of heights, I'm afraid of the fall. And what happens if I live? You know, someone had to point that out to me once whenever I was up on a ladder while I was an electrician, you know, just, you're not afraid of the fall, you're afraid of, like, if you survive. And I was like, yeah, you actually have a point. So it's kind of like digging into my fears and stuff. I'm wondering how different my perspective is going to change looking at some of those traumas once they're tapped down, you know? So...
Yeah. Something like a fear of heights there's like a general sense that all humans kind of have that. There's just an innate need to protect our body. Yeah. And even kids, the youngest age, will have a general feeling of fear of heights. So that's kind of a built-in thing. Unless you have a trauma surrounding it, it would probably be pretty easy to neutralize.
Yeah, it's really weird because as a kid, I was afraid of roller coasters and stuff like that. Still kind of am, but it also boiled down to the fact of it was that I'm not in control of the roller coaster, you know? So I wasn't afraid of the roller coasters. I was afraid of not being in control of my body. And so,
that makes a lot of sense.
I would have liked to have tapped that fear down before going to, you know, Universal. But I just got the old therapy of, what is it?
Hypnosis?
No, not hypnosis, where you are literally just subjected to the fear in hopes that you get over it.
Yeah, I don't know what that's called, actually. Exposure therapy?
It was kind of like I agreed to it, so I was going to have to do it anyways. So I got over it pretty quick. But it turns out I'm also an adrenaline junkie.
So part of you enjoyed it.
Oh, yeah. A large part of me really enjoyed it and didn't want to stop until I physically couldn't. So it's kind of like, how many times have you seen someone eliminate or neutralize a fear or a trauma, and it turns out that they actually really enjoyed that thing?
You know, it's interesting. I think when we really face what it is we're afraid of and lean into what it is we're afraid of, we often find that the fear wasn't as real as we thought it was. If we gave it so much energy and we gave it so much attention, and then when we actually lean into it and look at it in detail, there isn't much there holding it up. So as long as we have the willingness to engage with it, it's probably easier to dislodge than we think. But I would say some fears, especially foundational fears, tend to heal in layers. So, for example, when I first discovered that it was so much more beneficial I was in like a massive crisis point in my life. I was having physical issues. I was having professional issues, emotional issues. I was a mess. So I started tapping maybe 30 minutes a day for about 2 weeks straight. And I went straight to all of my fears and just started tapping on those.
Okay.
And then my life expanded and I was able to see past some of my fear lenses that used to be in place. And all of a sudden the world got bigger and I felt myself like, oh my God, my perspective has widened so much by working through these fears. I feel like I could go out and do anything at this point. And then I did. And I started my own business and I was speaking publicly about tapping and really getting over a lot of fears. But then I wanted to expand even more into the app. And then I started bumping up against that same old fear of not being worthy and deserving of really good things. And I had to do some more work. And then I expanded and now, it feels fine to have an app and it feels fine to like be out there. But the minute I want to expand even more, I'm going to bump up against that same not worthy or deserving fear. And I'm going to have to do more work on it. So we heal in layers and then we expand into the space that we've created around it. And then we have to release it again. And then we expand even more. And we just have to expect that this is going to be a lifelong work. We're never going to be free of those foundational fears, but we will reduce them to the point where they're unrecognizable unless we push up against them anymore.
Interesting. It almost makes me think of like a spider molting its skin, because it's growing, and I also say spider because they weave webs and they create their fate, So it
creating their environment. Yeah.
Yeah. So that does really sound like shedding fears is like being a spider. So maybe some people can get over their spider fears by just imagining themselves as being a spider.
If that is something that resonates with somebody, include it in your tapping.
Yeah.
Talk about it all you want.
So whenever we're talking about tapping and all this, you talked about having a script. So in your script, is it to where someone can say, I need to adjust the script to fit my scenario a little bit better? Can they do that?
I encourage that every single time.
Okay.
What is most beneficial when doing any kind of a tapping script is to infuse, if you can, your own words. Because many people use the app, I had to genericize a lot of them to fit a lot of different scenarios. And so not every aspect of a tapping script is going to apply to you or somebody else. And what's important there is to, if you can in the moment, infuse in your own words to make it applicable to you as much as possible. Infuse in your, the language that you would use, the ideas that you would use, and it is going to be that much more effective if it feels authentic to what your experience is. So I encourage that across the board. Yes. Say all the things that mean the most to you in the tapping script. If it doesn't already say it for you, put it in there yourself. Yeah.
Gotcha. And someone should definitely speak from their diaphragm, from their heart, their spirit. Whenever they speak these out loud, they want to speak with conviction because they need to believe it, correct?
They need to believe it and they need to feel it.
Ooh, feel it.
Yeah. And I'll give you an example. One of my favorite things to do with clients is kind of rage tapping. If you, for example, experienced like a lot of trauma at the hands of your parents or a sibling or something like that, and you have denied yourself really experiencing that anger at them your entire life, It is so therapeutic to rage about how many problems they caused for you in their life and how much suffering they inflicted. And you can yell at the top of your lungs. The great part is nobody's going to get hurt. Nobody's going to hear that on the other end. And you can rage about it all you want and allow yourself to feel it all you want. And it is the most therapeutic thing, because it's not something people will normally allow themselves to do. And that's why it's so transformational to say these things out loud. That's one of the biggest comments I get from people is I've thought these things, but I've never said them out loud. And it is really cathartic to actually give them a voice and release them from your body on a very physical level. You feel that change. You feel that lightening of your spirit when you allow those things out loud and out in the world.
Okay, that's awesome. I was going to say earlier something about anger, but the question slipped my mind because something else took its place. Anger is one of those feelings that a lot of people are afraid to feel because they're afraid of what they're going to do with it. So it is definitely one of those that I think could be felt in a safe manner. And so you actually just brought it up and you called it rage tapping.
Yeah, my personal feeling about it. But I do think that anger is a really vital emotion. And people tend to, like you said, kind of take it out of their emotional experience because it can be really destructive. If they have witnessed a lot of anger in their family situation growing up, they've seen how destructive it is. They've seen how scary it is. And they make like a vow to not ever include that in part of their own experience. And anger is one of the main tools and one of the main emotions that tells us when something is unfair.
Yeah.
So women in particular really struggle with this because, they're often seen as hysterical if they allow something like anger in their life. But what happens when you don't allow it for yourself? I would say that women can have anger all day long on behalf of their kids or on behalf of like a cause or an animal getting hurt. But when it comes to themselves, they'll often dismiss it. But they'll make it a virtuous thing, like, I'm just a really easygoing person, or I'm just so adaptable, when the truth is, you probably don't have a lot of boundaries because you aren't able to get angry on your own behalf. You aren't able to see that something is really unfair and then advocate for yourself in that environment. So it can be really destructive to not allow it. As somebody that doesn't feel comfortable with the anger with the emotion of anger is most likely not going to become a rageaholic. They're not going to live in that space. But if they start to allow it just in small doses, they will see very quickly how it can benefit them over the long haul by being able to advocate for themselves, being able to say no when they really want to, and creating boundaries that protect their well-being.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that you brought all that up because anger is one of the misunderstood emotions, and it is a huge driving factor in change. Without anger, we would have no change.
Yes.
So
it's such a passionate emotion, isn't it?
Yeah.
And this is a lot of the times what people that struggle with depression are missing is that ability to get angry on their own behalf and have passion for life. Yeah, we want that. We want that fire in our bellies. We want that emotion. Yeah.
Yeah. And it really does suck sometimes. And real quick, do you know the I always screw up this word, passion, the original meaning for it whenever you break it down?
I don't.
So passion actually means to suffer for. So if you're passionate about something, you're willing to suffer for something. And so it does make sense that someone would get angry and passionate about something that they really care for. But if they're not willing to do that for themselves, they're not going to see a lot of change and benefits coming their way. And they might then weave their web to say, the world is against me and this is how it is. And whenever it's really not the truth.
Right.
But, and man, so tapping can make that spider actually molt that skin and then decide to go to another tree and try another web.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And become a whole new person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And instead of a web, it'll be a hammock because they're a person. But whenever tapping comes into play, what are some of the things that people bump their head up against the most whenever it comes to it? Such as, well, yeah, what head blocks do people get?
I think one of the biggest things is that people just don't have a lot of self-awareness about where their emotions are coming from. I mean, culturally, that's not really something that we have been encouraged to do across the board. So oftentimes people won't even be able to connect their behavior that they're experiencing today with something that happened a long time ago. Or childhood trauma or a fear in particular. So it really is just a process of kind of educating yourself, being open and curious about why do I have this fear of failure? Or why do I have this? Why am I reacting irrationally to this criticism? Why is it that I get so afraid that people are going to judge or criticize me? You know, people often have an awareness that they have these things, but they don't know what's underneath it. And oftentimes they aren't willing to look. They just are looking to manage those things instead of kind of solving the riddle and getting to the bottom of it. And there's all these tools out there to manage anxiety or to manage depression. And really the truth is you don't have to do that. You can actually get to the root and the heart of the issue and solve it and release it from your system. So that's probably the biggest thing. People, because they don't have that emotional awareness, they often have trouble even connecting with their feelings. So it's a process for me of often starting with a client, of starting at a really high level. And then getting deeper and deeper and deeper as they get more open to experiencing their emotions. Because at first it can feel really scary. It can feel really counterintuitive. And maybe even there might even be some fear that we're doing more damage by focusing on all of these challenging emotions. And I assure you that's not the case. We're just releasing what is already there in your body. We're just looking at it and we're putting a spotlight on it. It's not, it was there all along. But now we're just going to hopefully clear out all of that stuff in the cobweb. So I think it's really just that people, the process of engaging with those emotions that feel so scary for some people. And I get it. We have not been taught how to do this. We are not ever encouraged to do this. And it can often even be seen as weakness. To look at this side of ourselves. But the truth is we are emotional and spiritual and intellectual and physical beings. And we have neglected that emotional part of ourselves for so long. And it feels like the next revolution for health, to be honest with you, because there's so many people like yourself that are willing to talk openly now about mental health and the effects of trauma and the effects of physical issues and the toll that they take on our lives. And so with all this increased dialogue, it's going to be easier and easier for people to kind of engage with that part of it.
Yeah, I have to agree. With people talking about it, it definitely opens doors because people never know what someone else is going to hear. And someone doesn't necessarily know what they're going to hear is going to be the key that they need.
Yes.
So.
Yes. You know, I probably heard the same story 10 times before the 11th time some connection was made in my brain and it just made sense to me on a different level.
Yep.
So as long as we're determined and
Mm.
keep trying to move forward, even if nothing is landing at first, that determination is our best tool in finding the right answers for us.
Yep.
Keep looking, keep turning those rocks over and seeing what's underneath and trying to clear it out.
Yep. And even if you flipped a rock over and you didn't see anything, go back and flip it over again because you might have missed something.
Yes, yes. One of my coaches has often talked about, even if you're on an emotional intensity scale, you're at like a 2. That 2 still needs to be looked at, even though there's that part of you that feels like it's not that big of a deal. I guarantee you there's some part of you that is being held back by that fear. So let's take a close look at it, invest the time and the energy, and it will pay off. It will pay off.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it doesn't pay off in the way a lot of people think things pay off nowadays, because people want that physical reward, that new car and all this other stuff. But instead, this will give them the opportunity and the ability to actually be present and enjoy that new opportunity, that new car and stuff like that, instead of sitting there worrying about the car insurance and everything else.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
although I have to say, you will reap the benefits very quickly with working on physical issues. If there is that emotional aspect that is kind of holding your body back from healing, once you clear that, path to healing is pretty damn fast.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So real quick, we're right near the end of the episode. Where can people find you to either send you an email, or where can they find the app?
It's on both the Google and Apple Play stores.
Okay.
I'm also on all the social medias. I do like a short little daily tapping on each one of those things.
Ooh.
And you can go, so Soar with Tapping is the thing to look for on the App Store or on the social medias. And my website is soarwithtapping.com. And there, I want to tell your listeners, they can go to soarwithtapping.com/podcast-special. And there they will find a code that they can input into the app to get 50% off of their first annual subscription.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So everyone out there, definitely follow that link closely, because you definitely want a good deal. I also want to ask you a question. Do you think we'd be able to see you on the show again in the future?
I would absolutely love that, Keegan. Thank you for the invitation.
Of course, because there's no way we can get to the bottom of tapping or really any of the other experiences that you have in just 1 hour, because 1 hour, let's face it, I have more questions than I did get answers.
And maybe next time we can do a sample tapping round for your listeners.
Yeah, for sure. That would be awesome.
Okay.
And we can figure out what all else tapping can do for us. And I'm going to see if we can't get some audience questions to see if anyone has anything specific they would like to know about tapping. So
yeah, that sounds great. I'd love it.
All right. Sweet. Well, Amy, thank you very much for being on the show today. It's been an honor, a pleasure, and I can't wait to try out some tapping myself. So everyone out there, be sure to check out retrievingsanity.com. Check out the guest page to find Amy's portfolio. It's not portfolio, profile picture with the links. And as always, just have a great rest of your day. And Amy, do you have anything else you'd like to leave the listeners with?
Just the idea that there is no wrong emotion. Just lean into it all. It'll be easy. Easier once with practice.
I love that. So thank you again, Amy, and everyone out there. Have a great rest of your day. And thank you for listening to Retrieving Sanity on WDJY 99.1 FM. And as always, much love. Schlan and Stop. Cool.